Greetings, gods and goddesses in training. Welcome back to the channel. It is Uncle Makara. All relations. Today we're talking all about The Simpsons, one of my favorite shows of all time. Okay. I used to watch The Simpsons every Sunday when I was a small child. I think I was like 9 or 10 in Switzerland at the time where I would watch The Simpsons, especially when the newer episodes came out. And you know what? On this journey, I really have discovered that Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, is definitely a kind of a either a time traveler or a mystic or something, right? There's something going on with this energy. And one or two lucky guesses of The Simpsons is a coincidence. I get it. Three or four is like a little bit suspicious. But The Simpsons is nailed over like 18 future events, right? And many more. I probably 18 that are just coming to mind, like from Trump's presidency to Disney buying Fox to the God particle to smartwatches to FaceTime, voter fraud, pandemics, and even the Siegfried and Roy tiger attack, right? So that's not coincidence. This is a cosmic spoiler alert. And another weird thing is I tried to look up Simpsons predictions online and my whole YouTube crashed, right? It was like not showing the video. So very, very interesting on how this is probably being censored in some way, right? But just to flex, right? Groening also created Futurama, which is a show that's literally about the future. Like he's just winking at us while he's holding the cheat codes of time. So at this point, either Matt Groening is a time traveler or the universe itself is binge watching The Simpsons for script ideas. Nowadays, if the show started off, it wouldn't work, right? Because we know the word simp means something else, and nobody wants to be the son. Okay. Now, to understand these cryptic spiritual messages, now I understand that Matt Groening claims that he's agnostic. I don't buy that for a second though, because look at all the cryptic spiritual messages and commentaries and satire that he's creating on religions and these different ideas, right? Like he has his own comic strip called Life in Hell, right? So I was actually going into some of these episodes to try to understand their significance to spirituality and the surreal and the symbolic and the kind of theological cultic territories, right? So the first one I came across was when Homer went on this hallucinatory spiritual quest in the episode El viaje misterioso de nuestro Homer, right? Which is the mysterious voyage of Homer. In a chili-induced hallucination, it sends Homer into a metaphysical journey with a spirit guide who's a coyote, actually. That's kind of voiced by Johnny Cash, okay? And then he wrestles with the idea of soulmates. Initially, he's not convinced that Marge is a soulmate, but ultimately, after going up to a, what do you call those, lighthouse, Marge had found him, right? And ultimately, he reconciles, realizing their deeper bond, where he starts going, "We're number one. We're number one." Okay. Which is actually an attitude that all relationships should have, actually, because if you're ever comparing yourself and thinking that you're not number one, it kind of takes you away from the flow of your own creation, right? Which is your something you've been working on, something that you're building, right? A legacy, a family throughout time. So that's really interesting to me. Now, the second episode that I'd watch was from season 9, and this was the Joy of Sect, where the Simpsons family, they give up everything for the movementarian cult that they join. And it kind of makes fun of Scientology, Rajneesh's Rolls-Royce, Heaven's Gate, and a bunch of other things, right? But this episode is loaded with satirical takes on ideological manipulation, indoctrination, religious marketing, and so forth. It's very powerful that they were able to take this parody in such a way that it reflects based on actual cults and the way that they function, right? The next Treehouse of Horror episode on Hex in the City, right? Homer's curse manifests as a cosmic misfortune. So Marge sprouts massive blue hair, uh, Lisa becomes a centaur, Bart's neck stretches unnaturally, and Maggie turns into a bug-human hybrid, and magical beings like Yoda mediated marriages enter the fray. It's very weird and it's very surreal. And it's a surreal reflection on family roles twisted by supernatural chaos. Okay. Now, The Simpsons have been used as a medium for theological discussions a lot, right? Marriage, community, moral duty, and the everyday grind are portrayed with both satire and emotional sincerity. So it makes the show almost a theological lens for us, right? For examining modern life. And the writers embed these clever niche humor steeped in history and culture and pop culture. Uh, for example, like not many people know this, but when Mr. Burns, he answers the "Oi, oi," right? When he answers the phone, he's actually doing the telephone greeting that was proposed by Alexander Graham Bell, right? So these little nuances and anecdotes, like Milhouse's unrequited affection for Lisa, or Lisa and Homer's relationship and how they work. It shows these deeply emotional ideas and concepts of mutual love, growing respect, and so forth, which I think is why this journey is sort of ameliorated over time with lots of people watching this show. Why does The Simpsons have this timeless quality to it? And let's observe it, okay? Number one is there are universal archetypes and relatable family, right? The foolish dad, the nurturing mother, the mischievous son, and the wise daughter, and the innocent baby, right? These archetypes mirror mythology and sitcom tradition while being exaggerated enough to never get stale. Because they're animated and symbolic, they're less contaminated or constrained by realism. So they remain relatable across generations. And from the start, The Simpsons have always been a mirror of society, mocking politics, religion, technology, celebrities, even television itself, right? Kind of the satire quality similar to like South Park or Family Guy does, right? So satire gives this show an ever-renewing subject pool, right? So every new president, tech trend, or cultural fad becomes fresh new material for the writers. So it makes it evergreen. The jokes from the 1900s about mall culture flow seamlessly into jokes about TikTok in the 2020s. So characters don't age or die, right? Unless they were intentionally written that way. Bart is perpetually 10 years old. Homer's forever a middle-aged dad, right? This avoids the aging out problem in live action shows, which usually lose believability when actors change too much. Plus, animation lets the show explore very surreal, cosmic, or mystical themes that live action sitcoms could never pull off. So it attracted countless guest stars from Michael Jackson to Stephen Hawking to Lady Gaga to Elon Musk, right? And these appearances constantly refreshed the show's relevance and drew in wider audiences. Because the internet gave The Simpsons a second life, fans noticed its eerily accurate predictions and they created a meme-driven mystique that keeps it trending. Have you guys noticed this? Even decades later, right? The Psychic Simpsons meme makes new audiences curious and keeps old fans hooked. Because Fox built its network around The Simpsons in the early 1990s. It was their flagship, so no real competitor in animated primetime TV until much later, South Park and Family Guy happened much later. So The Simpsons actually dominated the space. But by the time competitors arrived, The Simpsons was already entrenched as a cultural institution. And the writers constantly play with the format of breaking the fourth wall, right? Parodying entire film genres and revisiting their own history. So this is a reminder to all of us that we can incorporate these dynamics of timeless archetypes, sharp social satire, and the flexibility of our own imagination, which is kind of like animation, to create a cultural shift for ourselves, right? To be a living time capsule, so to say. Now, this is very, very exciting because not many people are thinking of The Simpsons like this, right? Worst episode ever. Okay, comic book guy. Ay, caramba. Don't have a cow, man. Right? Bart or Homer's. Oh, why you little? Right? These are iconic moments, right? These are iconic. Homer, right? These are iconic moments from these characters where you could hear gnarly Bart, dude, right? And know that it's Otto. You can hear Skinner and know it's Superintendent Chalmers. You can hear, Mr. Burns, right? And know that it's Smithers. So by the tonality and the vocal inflections, you can pinpoint the characters and you start messing with the dial a little bit. And then you understand that, you know, Skinner, understand that Principal Skinner, um, Smithers, right? Chief Wiggum, they all have a similar kind of voice, but it kind of modifies very slightly. Chief Wiggum is more like this, the voice, right? Skinner is more monotone. Mother, right? Skinner is more monotone. And then you have, I don't know, sir, like very nasally, very high pitched, right? Which is Smithers. So try to understand that these character archetypes are so precise that it almost takes a voice or a vocal tonality and then it kind of goes around a dial, right? To kind of match all of the archetypes, all of the orbits of emotion that are floating around, all of the characters, all of the scenes. Like, if you've been running a show for that long, you were going to predict some things, right? Like, just like my videos, right? You can go back to so many videos of mine and you could be like making an argument or a case like I predicted some things, right? And I probably did. However, take these off for a second. So essentially, what's happening is The Simpsons has its own morphogenetic field, okay? You think you're safe in your soft illusions? You're not. You are, you have to carve your own fortress of presence because presence is the ultimate morphic field. I realized something the other day where consciousness is usually born in pain. So the scream of betrayal, the punch to the face, the nights of hunger, that's your anvil. You were meant to dare to meet it without flinching. If you become more than human, you become presence itself, right? So the field comes, the field that bends violence, the field that melts projections, the field that makes shadows whimper and flee, all comes down to presence. You will stride into chaos and chaos will bow. This is the energetics of the morphic field of presence. So this is what you want to carry if you understand, not to get sidetracked by so many different superstitions and conspiracy theories, but instead you're looking through the lens. You're understanding how to optimize things. You're understanding how effective it must be to be the writer of a show, to try to put these things together, right? So don't get caught up in the noise of The Simpsons or predicting things. Understand that you are predicting things all the time, okay? Understand that you aren't necessarily fortune tellers or psychics, and that anybody who has a deeper enrichment in anything that is not normative information, but information of a higher caliber, that means that there is some level of a delving into the unconscious, the collective unconscious of all of these different ideas going on. Now, we're not exactly sure of what this is, right? However, we can guess. We can guess because The Simpsons is almost an aggregate device, right? It was originally organic, absorbing and reflecting the collective unconscious through humor and, surreal narrative freedom. But over time, it became a feedback loop, imprinting imagery into the collective mind and then feeding off the energy people gave to those images, eventually co-opted for predictive programming and social engineering, not true prediction, but mimicking foresight to shape mass perception. Now, predictions are foreseeing events naturally or psychically. Predictive programming is seeding ideas into the collective so they seem inevitable, using the mind's creative power to manifest engineered outcomes. Okay. Now, we can actually use predictive programming for the good as well, right? However, not necessarily always the case. I mean, just because the Simpsons say it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means that the hive mind is highly suggestible by shows and different things that they watch. It could be that case too. So there's an organic timeline of natural emergence from the collective imagination, memes as subconscious communication. But then there's also a synthetic dark occult timeline, right? Using intentional manipulation to steer the collective for agendas. Both mass media blends both because most mass media blends both of these. If you only see one side, you risk falling into disempowerment. So if the universe is all mind and the universe is mental, it means that reality can be sculpted through our thoughts. If enough sources seed an idea, whether it be news, entertainment, cartoons, it can actually alter the mass consensus reality for good or bad. So when a show like The Simpsons is hijacked, right? It can insert thought forms into the aggregate or the collective psychic field and then manifest not through prophecy, but through an engineered resonance. So the public mistake this for eerie coincidence and further empowers the implanted idea. So the master's role here is the true adept learns to become their own demiurge in a sense. You're crystallizing your chosen reality rather than unconsciously feeding into these synthetic narratives. So mastery means turning obstacles and even manipulators into the path itself. Now, what exactly is an aggregate and how is Simpsons an aggregate? An aggregate in this context isn't just a group, it's the psychic weather of humanity. It's the sum total thought form generated by all living minds, emotions, archetypes, and symbols that are currently active in the human field. So you could think of it like this: a living cloud of information and energy that's continuously shaped by our attention, beliefs, and emotions, right? A morphic web where individuals' thoughts and feelings link up with similar ones, merging into these massive thought entities. The collective psychic bloodstream has flowing ideas, images, and vibes into every plugged in mind. This is what the Hermeticists called the mental plane on a macro scale. So one mind sparks an image, a belief, or a story. If enough people think that, it forms an energetic structure, right? A thought form that starts to live in the aggregate. And the stranger the emotion attached, the denser and stickier it becomes, right? Media, religion, art, memes, and conversations keep feeding this aggregate, and the aggregate broadcasts back, nudging people into choices, dreams, or random thoughts or synchronicities that match its vibration. So in the organic timeline, you're emerging naturally from a shared experience like joy during a festival or mourning during a tragedy. But synthetic timelines are intentionally planted by marketers, occultists, governments, or media to harness attention and to manifest specific timelines. Okay. So the collective psychic field is the ocean of the aggregate swims in. It's the subtle grid that interlinks every human psyche. In Eastern thought, it overlaps with the Akashic field. In Jungian terms, it's the collective unconscious. In morphic resonance theory, it's the species-wide memory field. It's why you can catch moods from social media without speaking to anyone. It's why ideas spread like viruses, even without direct communication. and symbolic patterns or archetypes appear independently across cultures. So why does all of this even matter for Primal Sutra? And why am I talking about this? With The Simpsons being one of my favorite shows, it got me thinking. The aggregate isn't just what everyone's thinking. It's a living, breathing psychic organism. If you're unconscious, it uses you. If you're awake, you can use it. In the wrong hands, it's a tool for mass hypnosis. In the hands of a master, it's a lever for reality creation. Okay? So mastery means becoming the conscious node in the field. Instead of passively absorbing things, you broadcast from presence, your chosen frequencies into the aggregate. I think presence is the strongest morphic field ever. Okay? Presence is the strongest morphic field ever. So make sure you clear out parasitic thought forms so you're not unconsciously broadcasting fear or scarcity. And use memes, language, and archetypes to seed empowering currents into the collective instead, right? You're actually changing the world by through memes, through language, through archetypes. It's quite wild to think about, right? And also timeline steering. So understand that collective attention is like a rudder, and we have to shift it if you want to shift into better and greater probabilities. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this video gave you new insight, new lens into this topic. Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. You got this. We got this.